Welcome to the Moulding Health Show. Our goal is to leverage the wisdom and experience of healthcare practitioners to set you on a path of self-discovery and healing. These insights, coupled with a multidisciplinary approach to each area of interest, should provide an invaluable resource to everyone looking for a better approach to health. In this episode of the show, we speak to Annaleen Joubert about diabetes management from a dietitian perspective. Annaleen Joubert, welcome to the show. So we're really glad to have you on board. Thanks for doing this.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is always ours. I mean, we're always so amazed that, practitioners are actually so excited about, this stuff just as much as we are. And we're going to be talking about diabetes management from a dietitian perspective. And I think just before we started, I was telling you, we probably didn't have as many dietitians as we would like. And I think dietitians play such a huge role, in the overall health of people that I was actually very happy when, when Discovery were really pushing, the whole dietitian aspect of health. And then I think a few years ago they stopped. Is that correct?
Discovery.
Yeah. So as part of the vitality aspects, you had to do you had to do like dietitian visits. And for some reason they stopped that, which I thought was interesting.
I don't think they've completely stopped it. I know you still have to, if you want to have your full points, you must still come see a dietitian. Yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
Cool. Okay.
And they're really, especially with diabetes, I know they're really pushing. They've increased the number of visits a year and everything. So they're getting back on track again.
Okay, then that's really good news, because obviously then I didn't follow that really nicely, but I'm glad that they're doing that then. So when we normally start, I always ask, how did you even find out about us? I know Shez normally does her outreach, and she's normally in charge of doing the scheduling. But how did she reach out to you? Did you know her before?
No, she reached out to me on LinkedIn. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Just dropped me a message, and then I went to check out the podcast a little bit, and yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's actually so interesting that we've had quite a few practitioners come in from the social media platforms. Have you always used it, especially LinkedIn, because it's not a platform that normally practitioners seem to use?
Yes, I mean, I don't use it religiously. I have a profile on there, and when I was unemployed, it's a good place to look for jobs. So I use it in that way. And it's also good to make connections.
Oh, okay, cool.
With other dietitians. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you do that, because I think that seems to be my experience as well, is most people, they definitely have a LinkedIn profile because it's one of those things that you do. But it's not the place where they normally hang out, as in, this is not their favorite social media platform. It normally seems to be Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest. That seems to
exactly. Yeah.
I was like, I got the invite, but that's not the party I'm at, which is actually interesting. But for us, I mean, we found quite a lot of clients on LinkedIn, and we keep a presence. But I do find, it's not maybe as fun as the other platforms.
It's more job orientated.
I think they've done some work over the last few years as well, to get it, like video is a big thing now, and stuff like that. But you're right. I mean, it's much more of that professional part to it, which is good enough. Not good enough. It's great, because we met you. So cool.
Exactly.
So to kick it off, I mean, why diabetes management specifically, is in terms of an area that you concentrate on?
I'm very passionate about diabetes. I don't have diabetes in my family, but being in the nutrition, being a dietitian, it's probably 90% of my clients are diabetics. So I became very passionate about the topic. I read up a lot more about the topic, and then I had the opportunity to become a diabetes educator. And that also brought in a whole nother aspect to managing diabetes, and not just from the diet point of view, but also from knowing a little bit more about the medication and the insulins and how to help people with that. And diabetes it's a huge problem, and it's just a growing problem. And especially in South Africa, it's I mean, every second person that walks in my office is a diabetic, type 2 diabetic especially. And it's also a disease, a chronic disease that you can definitely prevent. You don't ever have to have diabetes, or you don't ever have to have complications from diabetes if you do have it. It's just people aren't educated enough on how to treat it or how to manage it. And yeah, I'm very passionate about helping people and educating them how to best control their blood sugar levels.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I thought I was probably the only one until I met my wife, which is, we've been married for about 15 years now. I didn't even know what diabetes was. I don't think it came up in conversations. But her side of the family, it's almost like every second person has it. And for many years, I mean, she's, like almost paranoid about it. She would always say, she's pre-diabetic and stuff like that. And, health, yeah, like nutrition played a huge role. She would always be conscious, even now. I mean, she's very conscious of like what she wants to eat and whether she can have that or can't have that. And she's not diabetic. So I kind of resonate with what you're saying. And it's good. I mean, like, in terms of being like that, because I think, being a dietitian, this better than anyone else. But that whole balance and nutrition, plays a huge role in our overall well-being.
It does. It does really. Yeah. And I always tell, it's good that your wife is eating healthy in any ways, even though she's not diabetic. I always tell my clients that everybody should eat like as if they have diabetes, because it's a healthy diet, and it's not that it's a restrictive diet. It's the way we should eat. It's healthy.
Yeah, spoken like a true dietitian. Yeah, just get back to basics. No overindulgence. No manufactured food, stuff like that.
Exactly. No processed foods.
Yeah, I'm definitely a disciple. I mean, like you got me, but yeah, it's actually difficult in the world that we live in, though. Hey, in terms of how stressful sometimes life could be. And we came across like someone, and she was saying, she spends so much on like Uber Eats and stuff like that, and it's kind of like, it's you just know it's going to be a recipe for disaster, and yet we still do it anyway, which is an interesting time.
It is. But I always think, it's still a conscious decision that you make. And our mindset is just not right at the moment, because we'd rather put our health way behind in our priority list, which is not good. And you'll always have the time. You just need to make the time to make yourself a small dinner instead of ordering the Uber Eats. It's just we don't want to make the time.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I like the honesty as well with that. I was reading an article yesterday, and it was about how do you prepare for the week and stuff like that. And the person was saying that they almost like prepare the meals ahead of time, and what that does is it almost like takes out that that thinking around what are you going to eat, because when you start getting to that hungry stage, then it's fight or flight, and you like just get anything. And I thought that was quite interesting. It's almost like what you're saying now. You almost like planning out for the week, and then you don't have that like stress around it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah,
is that something you advocate as well?
Yes. Meal prepping is a very, very good idea. Especially, you always have one day off a week or sometime at least. And then meal prepping doesn't have to be, you do it on a Sunday evening, put on some nice music, quickly make your food for the whole week. And then you don't have to ever stress about it for the rest of the week. And you don't have that temptation, like you said, to quickly go buy something here or to get the takeaway there.
Yeah, because someone, and I don't know where I heard this, but they say as your blood sugar goes down, you go into this mode where you're just craving, like things that you shouldn't. So it's almost like trying to get ahead of the curve and not let it get to that stage. And the way they positioned it in the article as well was that they said, even from a cost point of view, because you're prepping ahead of time, you know exactly what you're going to buy when you go to the grocery store. So it saves you time, the money, all of those things. So.
Exactly. So it's actually a win-win.
Yeah. So coming back to diabetes, though, can you tell us what is it? It seems to be a lot more common now. People do understand what it is, and as you said, there's probably more time that we can spend on education. But is there? Can you tell us what is diabetes?
So basically, it comes down to your body not being able to use sugar properly. And whenever you eat carbohydrates or anything with sugar in it, and your carbohydrates are your breads, your rice, your pastas, your potatoes, fruits, and then some veggies as well. What should happen is that carbs should be broken down and digested into glucose, which is sugar. And then our body uses the glucose as energy throughout the day. So carbs is quite an important part of a healthy diet. Shouldn't be cut out at all. So what happens is when you eat a carb and it gets broken down into glucose, it goes from your stomach into your bloodstream, and then it should go from your bloodstream into your body cells. And if it's in your body cells, it's perfect. That's when your body can use it and you have energy and you can go about your day feeling fine. But the way it gets out of your blood is through a hormone called insulin. Insulin is produced in our pancreas by the beta cells in the pancreas. And insulin is basically the key, and it unlocks your cell doors so that your sugar can go from your blood into your brain cells or into your muscle cells or wherever you need the sugar. So without insulin, the sugar will always be stuck in your blood. So insulin is quite important. So what happens with diabetes is either your pancreas is not producing enough insulin, or it's producing insulin that doesn't work properly, which is called insulin resistant. And that's where the different types of diabetes also comes in with exactly if you're insulin resistant or if you're not making any insulin.
Okay. It was, I think this was the first time I was actually just, drawing like the mind map of it. But that actually makes a lot of sense. So when people say that they're not going to have carbs, I can almost like see where the issues would be then. Because can you get that sugar from, well, I suppose you could get it from other types of food that are non-healthy though. Is that right?
So if you cut out carbs completely and cut out sugar completely, your body goes into ketosis, and that's what all those other the ketone diet or the Banting diet is kind of based on, but it's also not the healthiest. But so what happens is your body uses your fats and your muscles, so your protein, as energy. But it's not a sustainable energy for your body, and it's not the healthiest thing to do. So you do need carbs.
Okay, so in that case, because that's interesting, because I followed the whole intermittent fasting movement for a while, and so in that one, I mean, what you just explained now, so at some point you're not going to have as much fat or protein, and you can't break it down as much. So that's why you do need the carbs, right?
Yes, exactly. And plus it's natural, and it's the easiest way for your body to use carbs as energy. It's not normal for our bodies to use our fats or our proteins or muscles as energy. It's like a long way around. It's not good for your muscle, because if you lose muscle, you lose your heart as a muscle. So it's not, and you lose lean body mass, which in the end slows down your metabolism and has a lot of detrimental effects. So it's not the best.
Okay, cool. Okay. I get that now. I mean, like very, very clearly. So when we come back to that different types of diabetes, can you just go through that a little bit for us?
Sure. So there are quite a lot of types. I feel like there's types being found out every day, but there's three main types. And there's type 1, type 2, and then gestational diabetes. Those are the main three. The other types is just, they're basically the same, similar as type 1, but a little bit different, or similar as type 2, but a little bit different. So they're not really classified as main types. So type 1 is an autoimmune disease. That's when your body doesn't make any insulin. So what happens is your immune system, unfortunately, attacks the beta cells in your pancreas, and then your beta cells make very little to no insulin. And type 1s are usually diagnosed at a young age. It's usually your kids that are diagnosed with type 1. I mean, there are obviously adults that are also diagnosed, but usually it's the kids. And you have to be on insulin treatment for the rest of your life. And then type 2 is more of a lifestyle disease. And that's the one that's more, that the numbers are increasing all over the world. It's the type 2 diabetes. That's the worrying one. And the one that can be prevented from following a healthy lifestyle. So in type 2, your pancreas is still making insulin, but you're insulin resistant. And there's no real specific, they can't pinpoint a specific reason why you become insulin resistant, but it has a lot to do with, I mean, it's genetic. Genetic plays quite a big role. And then also if you're inactive, follow a very unhealthy diet, eat too much refined carbs, sugars, cool drinks. If you're overweight, obesity is quite a major cause of the type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which one would they use? So my mother-in-law has it, and I mean, she uses the pen. So which type of diabetes would that be?
So the thing is, if it depends, because a lot of type 2s eventually, because it's a progressive disease, and if it's not well maintained or your blood sugar isn't well controlled when you were diagnosed or for however long you've had it, your pancreas works overtime, continuously trying to decrease your blood sugar, releasing insulin all the time. And then eventually, I mean, after a good couple of years, or it stops making insulin as well. So a lot of type 2s, even though they had, I mean, their pancreas is still working in the beginning, they do eventually end up having to take insulin as well as oral tablets to bring down their blood sugar. So, I mean, it would depend if she is still on tablets, when she was diagnosed, whether she's type 1 or type 2. But you don't really change. So if you were diagnosed at the beginning and you know it's an autoimmune disease, then you're type 1. But if it's not an autoimmune disease, it's you're insulin resistant, and they start you on oral tablets, and then eventually you go to insulin, you're still type 2.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and I like what you said about the autoimmune stuff, but I have to ask, I mean, I only, again, maybe it's just the circles I hang out with, but I've only started hearing this recently, like autoimmune disease. Has it been around for like a long time?
Yeah, it has. It has really been. I mean, type 1 has been around since, like, it was last year that it was 100 years of insulin.
Wow.
And I mean, they created insulin for type 1 diabetics, not necessarily, I don't even think type 2 diabetes was a thing back in the day. It was type 1 that was the problem. So yeah, it's been around for a long time. It's also increasing, very strangely enough, and they don't know why, because we don't know why autoimmune diseases happen. There's no cause for it.
Yeah. And the reason I say that as well, I mean, now you got like Hashimoto's, and you got the autoimmune diseases, that affect the throat, and like, and all of those things. So it seems to be, that's what I was saying, is that it seems to be a lot more common. But what you're saying is, which is interesting, is that from an autoimmune perspective, it's always been in almost like the diabetes part for quite some time. It's almost like it's spread or something.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I was on a webinar last year, and they were looking at the diabetes numbers, and they were saying, strangely enough, type 1 is also increasing along with type 2, and they don't know why. And it's strangely, in certain countries, it's increasing a lot more than in other parts of the world. They don't know why.
And do you find so that's interesting that you mentioned that, because my first guess would be that in a first world country like the US or UK, you would think that they have more diabetes because there's more fast food and stuff like that, whereas maybe a developed country or developing country maybe doesn't have as much access. Is there any correlation with that? Just out of interest, I mean, it'll be interesting to know what those countries are.
I mean, In all honesty, for South Africa is a developing country. So if we could compare that to like the UK, even though we are still developing, we we're eating a Western diet, and everybody is moving towards the Western lifestyle, Western diet, even in the rural areas, or everybody wants to move to the urban areas. So the numbers are still high, even in third world countries. I can't say for sure, I mean, if the exact numbers, but I know South Africa is up there with diabetes numbers.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. I mean, I was trying to see if there's a correlation between, like they say, like when people start earning more money, then the diet changes, so they did a study in China as well, like as you start moving, as you said, from the rural areas to the urban areas, and then, you get a better job, then, your lifestyle kind of changes, and then so does your diet. And there's some correlation there, but it's interesting, what diabetes, how that works, and whether,
Yes.
per country as well. But I like what you
Yes.
said. We actually had a podiatrist on and we spoke about diabetes management, and he said it quite nicely as well. He says, typical, like, South African context, and he says, when you're at the braai, you can have this, and you can this or this, but you can't have both. And I thought that's quite an interesting way of almost like,
Yes.
looking at it and saying, actually, there's, you almost say that indulgence and conscious effort part, with diet.
Yes, exactly. That's what makes it very difficult, because
Hmm.
people don't want to make that conscious effort.
Yeah. Which is the next point, coming to, so we know what diabetes is now, quite
Mhm.
clearly. What is diabetes management?
So, because diabetes is a chronic disease, which means it's not something that you can, I mean, you can cure it if you have type 2, but it's very difficult. And I have not had anybody who is disciplined enough to be able to be in remission. So it's a chronic disease. You have it for the rest of your life. And then the main thing is with managing it is you need to get your blood sugar levels at a good range throughout the day. And by doing that, or to do that, there's basically four main aspects. The first one is your medication. So taking your medication at the right time, taking the right kind of medication, um, taking the correct dosage of medication, and then healthy eating is obviously a cornerstone in managing your blood sugar levels. Being active, and then lastly, continuously monitoring your blood sugar levels. Because by monitoring your blood sugar levels, you'll be able to learn a lot more, and then you'll know how to manage it, or exactly what foods increase your blood sugar a little bit more, what activities decrease your blood sugar a little bit more. And from knowing that, you know what to avoid and what you can have. And so it's all about educating yourself
Mm. And
using
with
those.
Yeah, and when Lucas told us that, I think I even told, mentioned it in the other episode. I said, that's a huge workload, on people to be able to do that. I mean, I just think of like a normal day, and you have to, if you have to consciously measure, your blood sugar levels. Do you find that people do that quite easily, or is that a task?
No, it's a task. It really is a
Okay,
task, because
okay.
people don't like pricking their fingers either.
Yeah, I know. It's yeah. So I'm watching the technology advancements, and I would love, for the Apple Watch at some point to have that, built in, where you can actually see that, and you can see your, your heart, your blood pressure monitoring like on a real time basis. That would be amazing. Not just your
Yes,
heart rate.
I actually think it is in the pipeline. I was on a webinar last year as well, and it was something that is being developed, like your Apple Watch will be able to test or monitor your blood sugar levels. You do get, I mean, we have technology, we have the implants that you can get in your arm, which is like a 5 rand coin that goes on top of your skin, and then it continuously monitors your blood glucose levels, and then all you do is you scan it with your phone, and then you can see exactly what your sugar is at that time. So there is those kinds of things, but unfortunately in South Africa they are still very expensive, and I mean the medical aids are not covering it, so it's not really for the general public.
What's it called again? That's actually very interesting for me.
It's called a continuous glucose monitoring system.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is, I had, with the blood pressure stuff. I mean, at some stage I was doing the whole test, and I know there was like a machine you put on your arm, was it? And it constantly checks your reading like every 15 minutes, and then you can kind of see how your day is, going, and if there's any triggers. And I thought that was interesting. It was very inconvenient. It wasn't like a very cool experience, to have this thing like constantly like
deflate and inflate.
Especially if you're in a meeting, it's like, what is happening?
I can imagine.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it was only for a day. But I couldn't see that as a permanent solution. But yeah, interesting that you mentioned that. And I used to have fish tanks. I don't know if you've ever had fish tanks, but especially the saltwater tanks, you have to monitor these things, like the pH level, or else the fish die. And so whenever people talk about monitoring stuff, I always think of that and how like pedantic you need to be.
Exactly.
And I've never had anyone that tells me they measure that like 3 times a day. I don't think my mother-in-law does that as well. I think she just takes the pen or monitors every day.
Yes,
sure.
I know. I always, especially the newly diagnosed patients, I tell them try be strict for about a month or two, because you learn quite a lot from that month. Then, I mean, you're not going to test yourself 3 times a day for the rest of your life every day. That's very unrealistic. Nobody's going to do that. Your poor fingers are going to be so painful. So I tell them just for the first month, try do it three times a day. And then after the month, you can decrease it to once, twice a day max. And it's not too bad.
That actually makes a lot of sense if you do exactly what you mentioned earlier, which was you keep your diet consistent as well. And if you can get your diet like consistent, and how your body reacted over that month, then you pretty much know what that is. And I think if you're in tune with your body, then when something is wrong, maybe then you can test more or something.
Exactly. Yes, that's, you're 100% right. Yeah, because then you'll know how it feels when your blood sugar is too high, or how it feels when your blood sugar is too low. And you can anticipate then, if you eat this, my blood sugar is going to go up to 12 or something like that. And then you can be able to to do something about it, or to control it, or to avoid it rather.
Yeah, that sounds horrific, because I mean, I think the normal is like 5 or 6, isn't it? If I remember those vitality tests.
Yes, yeah, no, you're 100% right. Yeah, 12 is very high.
Yeah,
you never want that to be.
Yeah. And actually, I don't know, if we mentioned this already, or I don't remember ever mentioning it, but if your blood sugar is too low, you can actually go into cardiac arrest, right? Is that right?
You can. Most likely you go into also a coma.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, if it's too low. I must say it is a risk. I've had patients that have had low blood sugar, very low blood sugar, and I always, because having a low blood sugar is very scary. It's more scary than having a high blood sugar, because you feel way worse. Also, yeah, it's not good for your heart. You can go into cardiac arrest. Every time you have a low, it's very bad for your heart. So we always try and prevent the lows as far as possible. That's where if you're using insulin, it can become quite a risk of having lows. But knowing what to do, and just knowing how to adjust your insulin, or what causes lows, is also a good thing. It's all about education at the end of the day. Again,
just don't stop eating. I'll be like, again, I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but
yeah. Yeah, people always get very excited and they're like, yeah, so if it's low, you can have a sweet or you can have your glass of cool drink. And they're like, oh, yay, only if it's low.
Yeah, that's a standing joke in our family because again, because on my wife's side, it's lots of diabetes. So even with even with my wife's, if her blood sugar gets lower, then she has to have something to eat, or and so the standing joke is that just give her a Coke. And so even with my mother-in-law, I mean, I think she had and where blood sugar went lower, sometime last year. And the obvious thing is, because it's a diabetic, you don't want to give them a soft drink, or Coke. But for
Exactly.
her, she always says, just give me a Coke. And it's like counterintuitive to what you would normally give a diabetic, which is so funny.
I know. But they love it because then they can have their sweet things.
Yeah, I know. So even with my wife, like before we reach for the panado, it's like, do you need a Coke? Like, so there's always Coke. There's always a Coke, and oh well, there's always Coke in the house.
Okay, nice.
Well, yeah, I don't know if dietitians would agree with that, but yeah, there's always Coke.
For emergencies.
Yeah, like in those, those special, like those fire, you break the fire like glass thing, and you get a
Yes.
Coke, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a good idea.
Yeah. So coming to the early signs for diabetes, how does that work? So is there like certain markers that people would look out for?
So yes, definitely. The thing is, diabetes is very. I think this is also what makes it such a problem. Is the signs and symptoms are not obvious. It's weight loss, feeling tired, frequent urination, going to the bathroom often, being extremely thirsty or having dry mouth. Those are generally the main ones. You also have some people have itchy skin or tingling in their hands and in their feet specifically. But those symptoms can be explained with anything else. A lot of people think, no, I'm just tired, I'm feeling burnt out at the end of the week, it's summer, I'm drinking more water, going to the bathroom because I'm drinking more water, which is probably why diabetes is diagnosed a lot of the time, like when you've had it for a good couple of months already, which isn't good because the longer it's undiagnosed, the more your pancreas is working overtime, which is not good either. And then also the more complications you could have due to diabetes, because when your blood sugar is continuously high, it's damaging your organs, which is obviously something that you don't want.
Okay. I meant to ask you earlier when we were talking about the pancreas, but and I don't know if this is true or not, but they say like with your heart as well, there's a certain amount of beats throughout your lifetime, and then once the beats are over, that's kind of it. Do you think with the pancreas, there's a certain amount of insulin it produces, and once it's done that, that causes the issues, or is it like during that time, like you just mentioned now, where you're almost like pushing it past its limits? It's like a car, you can't like red line it all the time, and or maybe not
Okay.
ever, because you're going to break it. Is it something like
Yes,
that?
it's definitely something like that, because if you catch diabetes early or when you're pre-diabetic and you go into treatment or you change your diet, then and your blood sugar levels is well controlled, then your pancreas should be fine. Will carry on producing the insulin that you need throughout your lifetime. But it's if your blood sugar is out of control and high the whole time, your pancreas is continuously producing insulin to try bring it down. Even though you're overloaded with insulin, it's still going to produce it to bring down your blood sugar. And then that's when eventually it breaks like a car, doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, there is instances where very few instances, I do say this with a pinch of salt,
Mm.
that if you then go onto insulin and give your pancreas a little bit of a break for a year or 2 or 3, it can start producing its own insulin again. But yeah, a few instances.
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
kind of
well,
thing.
it's good to mention that because it's almost, it seems logical when you think about it because it's almost like you're giving your body, the time to recover. And I think the body is so amazing that, I mean, as great as, the professionals we have, it's normally that if you just give it this time and space to heal itself and you eat well and, exercise and give it all of the things it wants, it seems to almost like heal itself. So it kind of goes with what you're saying. Seems logical,
Yes,
but
yes,
maybe not
exactly.
all the time.
No, it's just difficult.
Yeah, and I think and the podiatrist as well, Lucas, mentioned that, and I don't know if this is a South African thing or not, but we always want to reach for a pill. We want that quick fix. We want, like, can we just take the tablet and then it's like over? And sometimes it's not like that. Do you find
Mm.
that with your clients as well?
Yes, I know. Not only my diabetic clients, but my weight loss clients, especially as well. They always ask me, or they ask the doctor, the GPs with practice that I work at, they always, can they go onto this tablet and then that tablet? They just want a quick fix. They don't want to actually change their diet or eat healthier. They want to carry on with eating unhealthy and taking a tablet. I
Hmm.
must say, with diabetics, they never want to go into insulin. So in that way, I can try and motivate them and tell them, okay, so if you don't change your diet, you are going to go into insulin eventually.
Hmm.
So you can take the tablets, but you have to also adapt your diet. It's not just about taking a tablet that's going to sort everything out.
Hmm.
It has to be the balance of those four aspects that I mentioned earlier, like your exercise, your diet, and then your medication.
Hmm. I'm quite curious about that, and again, because maybe I don't know, but why is it that they quite resistant about going onto insulin? Does it have like negative effects, or is it just the task of taking insulin now forever?
I think, I don't know, insulin has a very bad rap, I find, and I don't know why. I think people that are the thing is with I think people go onto insulin too late when they already have a lot of complications, kidney failure, amputations due to diabetes. And then their friends and their family think it's due to the insulin and not the diabetes.
Hmm.
So, in that way, I think then people are very resistant because they think insulin is going to make it worse, which doesn't make any sense. It's actually the opposite. But
Okay.
also, people don't like injecting themselves.
Yeah, I know. It's like, so apparently you have to like inject into the tummy. Like that like seems like the most weird place that you would have to do that. But I would think the
You have
arm
to.
or something.
Yeah, the thing is, you have to inject insulin into fat. Um, so you can't inject it somewhere where you have a lot of muscle. So that's why the tummy is usually the best place, and it also gets absorbed better in your stomach and also in your buttocks.
Hmm.
Um, just the areas in your body where there's a layer of fat underneath your skin. You can do your arms.
Okay.
Um, you can also do your thighs. It's an option.
Okay.
I always just think your arms is a weird angle because you have to do the back of your arm. And like,
Hmm.
it's, tummy is
Okay.
the easiest. You just sit and then.
Yeah. Thump.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting.
exactly.
Okay, that's I'm glad I asked that question because yeah, I can't see, and we spoke to like a few practitioners around ADHD as an example, and the medication around that, and I would see like with insulin because it's not natural in a way, there would be this boost initially, so it doesn't like just come on gradually. Maybe it's just that initial boost or something that that you feel. Maybe that's the resistance around it. But
Like when you take it,
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
because it's not
so
like controlled, it's not like yeah. Um,
no, exactly. You're very right. With insulin, it's tricky though because you get different types of insulins that work different, that have different activity times. So you have long acting insulins and you have short acting insulins, and you have
ah.
intermediate acting insulins and mixed insulins. So there are a lot of different types of insulins. So it all depends which one you use.
Okay, so that's not too different to how the ADHD medication works, from my understanding, is that you get long acting and fast acting, and So there's almost like you need to understand that quite clearly.
Yes.
And
Yes.
would it normally be a GP that would manage your insulin levels, or is there a certain specialist that I don't know?
So I mean, an endocrinologist can do that as well. Otherwise, your GP also can also prescribe your insulin and adjust your dosage according to your blood sugar.
Okay, yeah, familiar with the endocrinologist. Very, very cool practitioner that, in terms of just
Yes,
understanding it, what's going on.
exactly.
In terms of not managing it, are there certain dangers of not managing your diet and not managing diabetes?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, if you don't manage your diet, your medication isn't going to be able to work alone forever. I mean, maybe in the beginning when you're diagnosed, if you take your medication, it should make it better. But because it's a progressive disease, that tablet is not going to be able to control or keep your blood sugar well controlled if you do not change your unhealthy diet. So then you're going to have hyperglycemia eventually, and your doctor's just going to up and up and up and up your medication, which is something you don't want either, because upping your medication also comes with a lot of side effects. So complications of diabetes is quite scary. Even though diabetes is not something that you don't really feel ill from it. It's not like a acute sickness, not like the flu. But the long-term complications eventually is quite scary. It's stroke, heart attack, amputation, kidney disease, what else? Nerve damage, skin conditions, blindness. The reason why all of those complications happen is because the sugar in your blood damages the tiny blood vessels in your body. So everywhere in your body where there's tiny blood vessels, it's at risk of being damaged. So your kidneys, very small blood vessels, your heart, your hands and your feet, your eyes.
So, Annaleen, thanks. I mean, like, I think you closed a loop that we had in the other episode with Lucas, the podiatrist. And I remember what he said was the one way to almost like convince his clients that they need to get diabetes under control was to, I won't say threaten, but almost put it out there that if you don't get this sorted out, you will lose your leg. And it almost like gives them that knee-jerk reaction, that actually I do need to
Yes.
get this thing right. And what you kind of explain now is how that happens. I don't think in the last episode, we covered that. Like, why does that happen in terms of, the amputees? But the other thing you mentioned, which was very scary and it kind of resonated, in terms of, my mother-in-law as well, because we did notice that a few times, was they almost become resistant to heat, so they don't realize they're actually burning themselves. And I thought that was interesting, like a hot pot, they don't realize it. And then on his side, especially on the feet, he sees these burns and stuff like that, which he has to treat.
Exactly. Yeah, it's because it's the nerve damage that you get from the sugar, which is, I mean, yeah, from a podiatrist point of view, it's very important if you're diabetic to look after your feet, because you'll walk barefoot and you'll burn your foot or you'll cut it and you won't know, and then you'll go to bed and then you'll leave it and you won't feel it, and then 2-3 days later it's infected. Also, your wounds heal very slowly if you have high blood sugars. So then that's where the risk of gangrene and amputation comes in.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what he said. And he said, obviously the social aspects of that, of being, like sick or having a wound, and, other people having, well, normally family members having to take care of you during that time. And he said, that seemed to be the angle that seemed to work with people, to say, actually, you do need to take care of this, or else, it becomes worse, or, you will end up with this stuff, which I thought was interesting.
Yes, no, it's good. People need to know what they're in for if they don't take the necessary steps to control their sugar or their diabetes.
Yeah, see, I want to string that together, and that's what I'm hoping, with these type of episodes, is we always say you don't know what to look for, right? But because most people won't ask these questions, and unless you ask it in a certain way, you're not going to get the answers. But by speaking to people like yourself, that are really knowledgeable about this stuff, you know what decisions you need to make now. So like having those Uber Eats for 30 days in a row is probably a bad idea, because you could end up with diabetes, which could mean that these are the options you have. And I think when you put it like that, it's a completely different story to say, just saying, okay, cool, what's the worst that could happen if I get diabetes? I just have to do insulin. And,
Yeah.
and I think, that's probably an extreme case, but it still like almost seems to be the thought pattern that maybe it's not so bad. And maybe that's why you're seeing the rise in diabetes as well, because lifestyle is not getting better.
Yeah, definitely. And it's as if people are just compliant as well to it's just something that happens, diabetes. It's just their family members have all passed away from diabetes, and that diabetes is uncontrolled, and then they just throw their hands in the air. What must I do? Which isn't good.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying as well, which is very important, is that firstly, from a genetic point of view, yes, you might get it, but there's no guarantee that you will get it. So, maybe be ahead of that curve. And the second one is, even if you do have it, I think there's a better way to maybe manage it so that it doesn't become worse. And, we talk about amputees and stuff like that, which is a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. No, exactly. And it's not that difficult I mean, in the beginning, it's probably easier said than done. But it's if you educate yourself and you put in a little bit of admin and time in the beginning, you can live a completely normal lifestyle, a long, healthy lifestyle with diabetes. You don't even have to know that you have it. It's just putting in the time and the effort in the beginning.
Yeah, I must admit, like with my mother-in-law, I mean, she's really good with that stuff. She'll know she can't have that, and even if it's like a family gathering, she would say, "Oh, sometimes I can have a little bit of that, but not that, not the cakes." As an example.
Yeah, everything in moderation.
Like with cold drink, we always get Tab, and she seems to be cool with that. But which is an interesting point, because we spoke about sugar and we spoke about how it gets processed. So can diabetics not have any sugar? Is that how it works?
So they can. It's not that they can't have sugar. It's just they shouldn't have too much sugar. They shouldn't overload their bodies with sugar. They should try and achieve an average flat curve, I can say it like that. Obviously, it'll increase during your meals, but you should try have a more or less flat curve of your blood sugar throughout the day. So you can have sugar. If you have a teaspoon of sugar in your coffee and you have 1 cup of coffee a day, it's really not going to be the end of the world. But if you have 1 sugar in your coffee and you have 3 slices of white bread and you have chips, then it's too much blood sugar for your body to manage at one time. And then you're going to have a spike in your blood sugar, and your medication is not going to be able to bring that large amount of sugar down properly. So it's all about moderation. I always tell my clients it's the easiest, cut out sugar, because that's probably the easiest thing to cut out, because you shouldn't cut out carbs, because carbs are healthy. You get your fiber from carbs, you get your B vitamins from carbs, and they give you energy. So you should still have carbs. So eat your carbs, cut out sugar. Then you don't need to worry about overloading your body too much.
Yeah, there's another thing. I wouldn't say spend too much of time thinking about, but they always talk about like how bad alcohol is in the world, and how bad, obviously the tobacco industry, and those industries always come back and they say, do you know how bad sugar is? And that's not regulated, and that's not. We don't like put it in the same category, and people are dying every year from that. And there's a certain semblance to that, when you think of the knock-on effects that we don't really almost like correlate to. We don't say, because you had so much of sugar, here's the diabetes aspects. So I like how you said that. And if you had a choice, would you tell people actually no sugar? at all?
I do tell. It's obviously a very individual client. I mean, I take a client at a time, but I have told people to cut out sugar. Don't just get your sugar under control, because that should be your main goal, especially in the beginning. Cut it out. I mean, you don't have to not eat sugar for the rest of your life, but try cut it out as much as you can in the beginning, definitely. Because there's so many options, sugar-free options these days. You don't have to have sugar. I mean, if you want to have a Coke, you can have a Coke Zero or a Tab. If you want to have sweet coffee, you can use the sweetener.
And are the sweeteners better? I mean, like, are they healthier? I know from a calorie point of view they are, but
yes.
Is it like good for your body, or is it okay, you shouldn't have that as well?
So definitely for a diabetic patient, it's much better. And you get sweeteners that are a little bit more unhealthy and ones that are fine, a little bit better. The thing is, sweeteners there's no scientific evidence that it's bad for you, that it's going to give you cancers, or it's going to give you, there hasn't really been too much studies done on it. And eating sweet, or studies that have been done, it's only causes bad effects if you eat a lot or drink a lot of it at once. And the thing with sweeteners, some of them are like 6,000 to 10,000 times sweeter than sugar. So you use way less. So the amount that you actually ingest is so small that it really isn't gonna give you any kinds of bad side effects.
So you mentioned Coke Zero and Tab, Coke Light.
Coke Light, yeah, as well. Thing is, with the fizzy drinks, because I don't like promoting them, even though they are sugar-free, because they have all kinds of other preservatives, and I mean, the caffeine in them is also, it's not good, healthy for a person. So you shouldn't anyways not drink fizzy drinks on a regular basis, regardless if it has sugar in it or not. But if you're diabetic and you out with friends, or you're at a social occasion and you're going to drink a Coke, I think drinking a Coke Zero or Coke Light, something with no sugar in it, is much better than something with sugar in it.
Okay, so I'm probably going to turn off my video when I do a sip of Coke. Yeah, so I'm glad I asked that. And when we come back to your clients, the ones that do listen and like follow your advice around the sugar, do you find? Can you tell us what they experience, as in, is it positive?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of them are able to come off sugar completely, and they never go back. Their blood sugar is also well controlled, and they feel a lot better. I actually had somebody yesterday whose blood sugar is very well controlled now. He's lost almost 10 kilograms, and he just feels much better, and he doesn't miss sugar. When he does have something sweet, it'll be a small portion, and it'll be like ice cream then, or something that he can, not sugar in your coffee, something more substantial, something there that you can enjoy a little bit better. And then it's not the end of the world. Then you can have ice cream, or you can have a piece of chocolate or pudding or something sweet.
Yeah, that's our Achilles heel, is ice cream. And that's why we try not to buy it, actually. Because then when it's in the fridge, then, or freezer,
you want to eat it.
Yeah, you eat it, and we normally try not to buy it. Yeah, and the kids, they do have chocolate, I think, but we try to limit that. Fizzy drinks, we do have a problem, so we probably have to get better with that, in terms of not having it as much. Our little boy loves it though. Like, I don't know. It's
really?
Like we never had it for such a long time, and it's like, he eats healthy most of the time. It's just like he does love like Coke Light. Not so much Coke regular, which is interesting.
Okay. Okay. At least that's a little bit better.
Yeah, he likes Tab and Coke Light. And you might find this interesting or not, but so the one time we did a blind test with Pepsi and Coke, and do you know which one came out? Which one he preferred?
Coke. I would say Coke.
Okay, yeah, that's what I would have thought as well. But he came out with Pepsi. He actually preferred the taste of
Uh,
Pepsi rather than Coke, which I thought was
Interesting.
quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
um, yeah, like experimenting with the kids, but um,
Seeing what's better.
yeah, yeah, blind test. They always talk about those blind tests. I always meant to do it, but it was interesting for me because he's such, he's so picky with his eating that I thought it was quite an interesting test.
Yeah, that is
Um,
that is interesting. I would
mm,
have said Coke. Pepsi, I don't like Pepsi.
yeah, I know that's what I would have thought as well, but it definitely was Pepsi. We don't buy Pepsi though,
Okay.
because firstly, I don't know where to buy it, and
Yeah,
just Coke's much more accessible.
yeah, it is. True.
When we come back, and this is probably the most important question, in the episode is, can diabetes be prevented by good eating?
Yeah, definitely. It can definitely be prevented. Even though if you have a family history of diabetes, especially if you know you have a family history of diabetes, by living an active lifestyle, doing your exercise, maintaining a healthy weight, and then following a healthy diet will definitely prevent you from ever getting diabetes, for sure. Um, Decreasing your sugar, staying away from refined processed carbohydrates, um, eating vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, high fiber carbs, low fats. All of that
No.
will definitely help
And
prevent.
that's such an important question and like such an important answer as well, or valuable answer that you just provided, because what that means then is it's within the control of everyone. Like doesn't matter where you are. If you know more, and I think that speaks to your education part that you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, was I think the more people know about this, the more that they know that actually they do have control over it, means that they could not have diabetes. Is that true?
It is. You're 100% right. Yeah. By knowing, also by educating yourself and by going for your routine checks, going for your blood sugar tests, checking your cholesterol. That also helps a lot because then it can be caught early, or it can be picked up that you're pre-diabetic or that you're insulin resistant, and then once you know, you can do something about it before it becomes complete diabetes,
Mm.
or you have to go on medication.
Okay, cool. I mean, that is so profound. I mean, it's not even funny because, I mean, that means that it is within our control. And I think, it just means that we just need to know about it and we have to be like, I suppose it's like with everything. You just have to be diligent about it and actually want to make a difference, which is good. You mentioned cholesterol though, and I know we didn't discuss that so far. Is there any
Mm.
correlation to this discussion in terms of your cholesterol levels?
Cholesterol, the thing is, especially with type 2s, they usually present as overweight, especially around their stomach area. And probably 90% of them has cholesterol and high blood pressure. So, and then diabetes. Those three usually go together. Cholesterol also tends to be one of the reasons or one of the causes of insulin resistance because it's a fat that goes and sits on the inside of your arteries and it blocks the insulin from being able to work or being able to unlock the cell door so that the sugar can go in. So I know it's routine for a lot of doctors. They put you on cholesterol medication once you're diagnosed with diabetes, just to prevent that as well, to keep your cholesterol levels low.
Okay, cool. I'm glad I asked that because I mean I don't think we covered that, and that's I mean they always say you want your cholesterol, but to be in check. But I always looked at it from more a heart disease perspective, but I didn't think of it from a diabetes perspective, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it
Um,
all it all has an effect on each other. I mean, there's that what we call it the metabolic syndrome, which is the three, the diabetes, cholesterol, and hypertension. and overweight, obesity. So
Okay.
it all plays a role. It all has an effect on each other. So.
Okay. I've never heard that before. Metabolic syndrome. So what is that again?
So it's if you have diabetes, high cholesterol, and hypertension, high blood pressure, and you're obese. But usually if you have those, you're obese. Yeah.
Okay, it's almost like you've checked like all of the boxes and then
You check all of the
okay.
boxes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. With cholesterol, one last question. So, can you reverse it? So, if you have high cholesterol, can you eat better and then it reverses? Like, in my mind, I have. Sorry, you were saying?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, sorry. You can. I mean, even without going on medication, I have quite a lot of patients that don't want to go into medication for cholesterol. They want to first do the diet thing, which is good. If they actually make the changes, then they do decrease their cholesterol. Cholesterol is more, it's more of looking at your fats and not so much your carbs, because it's the fats that's a problem, not your blood sugar. But still, generally, if you eat too much carbs anyways, it's going to turn into fat. So it's not going to help with the cholesterol. So it's dietary wise, if you follow a healthy diabetic diet, if you have high cholesterol, it's going to be good for your cholesterol as well. It's going to be good for your blood pressure as well. So.
Okay. Yeah, what I was going to say is like, whenever I think of cholesterol, I always think of those blood, like the blood vessels and, like the blood going through. And it's almost like this like plaque that sits, blocking it. And I always think like if you just like stop like getting the buildup going, then like almost like that plaque gets through the bloodstream. And I don't know if that's true or not, but you can reverse it. That's what you're saying.
You can 100%. You do, yeah.
Okay,
easily.
it's good to know. I also liked how you correlated the fats to cholesterol and the carbs to the diabetes or the sugar part, which is quite nice. My second last question, and then we're almost done, but I want to ask from I've always had a lot of respect for dietitians, but what I do find is almost like people look to dietitians just from a meal plan point of view. Is there anything that you can almost say, like how you do these checkups, with doctors, and it's almost part of your routine? Do you have the same type of setup for your clients where they almost from a monthly basis they check in and they say, okay, this is how I'm going? Because I think everyone loves this meal plans, like when you want to lose weight, when you do your triathlons, whatever that is, and they come for a meal plan. And my thing is like, how do you know that they're following up on that? And so it's more curiosity than anything else. How do you deal with that?
So I do. I mean, I do want to see my patients more than once, at least 3 times, at least, just so that I can also see if it's working and if they're doing better. But it's, I mean, a lot of the time people, like you said, people just want the meal plans and then they don't follow it. You can tell them, I mean, I can give them all the information, but at the end of the day, it's still your responsibility to want to make the change. So I do have clients that come back regularly, and we do weigh-ins and we chat about the meal plan and make adaptations, because I try to make it as easy and for them so that it fits into their lifestyle, but obviously with a healthier options. So it's good to chat continuously, and I usually follow up monthly. So a month is a good enough time to lose a nice amount of weight, or to get your sugars under control, or to actually make the changes that you should make in your diet.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. I think we spend so much of time and energy on like things like, and I would say even like studying, work, all of those things. And the most important person is always you. And it's interesting how little people spend on themselves, in terms of that. And if if good eating and nutrition is a core part of that, it's interesting how little time, as a society we spend on that part, the monitoring and the, are we doing the right things? So yeah, I'm a big fan of the
Exactly.
dietitian part. I definitely think there's like a whole movement that needs to happen for people to put those things together, though. In the same way that mental health or wellness has become a thing in the last few years, especially people pushing it from a corporate point of view, people pushing it
Yes.
from a society point of view. So, but I'm sure the board is doing something around that.
Yes, I think, since after I've studied, I think we have moved towards being more wellness centered, even with nutrition. I think the problem is that because nutrition is quite a new field, and the research, there's just too much information out there, and not scientific information. The person that lost 20 kilograms that knows nothing about nutrition on Instagram telling people to eat this and this and this and this, and you're going to look like this. And people tend to want to go for things like that instead of the hard way, which is the way that actually works and the way that actually shows that's better for you.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing with a lot of moving towards a healthier nutrition, eating healthier thing. There's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, I'm sure it makes dietitians cringe, though. Every new fad diet that comes out, intermittent fasting, banting, it's almost like keto. You almost like need to keep track of all of these things. And then there's keto plus banting. It's like, it's crazy. Yeah. I'm sure.
I know. It is crazy. You have to keep up with all of that. And then people come and they're very offended if I tell them, no, it doesn't work. Or it's not healthy. It's not sustainable.
Yeah. So last question when we, before we wrap up, I do want to ask, is there, I think we covered the topic really well, but is there anything around diabetes or diabetes management that we should have asked you that we didn't?
I think we covered everything pretty well. I think the main thing that people should know is the information and the support is out there. I mean, you have diabetes educators, you have your GPs, you have your specialists. I mean, you don't even have to go that far. You have your sisters, and they all are health experts that can help you and that are there to help you. And I think if you have diabetes, it's a lot of the time you put the pressure or the responsibility on your healthcare team, and it shouldn't be their responsibility alone. People need to realize that they have diabetes and they need to take responsibility for managing their disease as well by making the changes and listening to their healthcare team, and then they'll be able to manage their blood sugar perfectly without any problems.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
I think you summed up that really well. I love it. And I think, for anyone listening to it, I mean, I think that's good advice. And I think at least we can't say we didn't know. I think that's the thing. That's the message we want to put out there. And it's coming from a dietitian and, multiple aspects, like I mentioned with the podiatrist. And then, then you can make a more informed decision. But thanks for what you do. Thanks for this episode. We're really privileged to have you on board.
Thanks. It was nice to meet you, talk to you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. As always, stay tuned and we'll speak to you in the next episode.